we've had a few technical difficulties, so hence our little bit of a delay, but we are soldiering on. My name is Jack Martin. I'm sure most of you know me by now, but I'm the Archivist and Special Collections Librarian here at the Patten Free Library. It's so nice to see so many of you here on a sort of dreary January morning. We're so appreciative of you for coming out. YouTube, you can't see the room or anyone, they can see the presentation, I promise. But there is a packed house here in person, I assure you. A quick reminder, this is the first of 5 talks this year, but you do have to sign up for them individually. So if you want to see the full schedule and register for the other talks from Arousic, Georgetown, West Bath, and Woolwich, go to the Patten Free Library website and you can do it right. A recording of this presentation is going to be available early next week. It should be by Tuesday afternoon. And unfortunately, we don't have a way for our online attendees to participate in the Q&A this year. But what we will do is have email addresses in the description of the YouTube upload. You can send any questions that you have to either history@patten.lib.me.us, very big long email, you don't have to remember it, or info@bathhistorical.org. And both of those will be ways that you can get your questions answered. It won't be quite the same, but it'll be close enough. This morning marks the 21st year of the Town History Series, which was begun by the library's own Peter Goodwin in 2005. And the very first lecture was actually given by Roy Lawrence and explored Bath's past and present through some samples of his own photography. Now today, we're going to revisit that very subject, guided by a man who needs very little introduction. He's a treasure trove of information and one of the pillars of Bath history. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to the man himself from Bath Historical Society, Joe Minott.
Thank you for coming. I'm not sure how long this is going to last, but if you feel you need to leave early, please do so. You know, you need to take care of yourself. I don't pretend to be a public speaker. I'm more behind the scenes person. I don't use a computer, so I have to many thanks to my tech team, and one would be to Ned Baxter, who scanned these slides, and Brenda Cummings, who did all the computer work and did more research than I had already done, and putting this little folder together for me to use. Thank you, too far. Okay.
No, that's the next one.
You
turn the page, so I turn the slide.
Right.
Hi, Joe. Over your face.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody's looking at the page. There we go. That's great.
Yeah.
And this is where these come in. In 2005, Peter Goodwin then came, then who was the history room manager, conceived the Town History Series. The library's service area is Bath and the surrounding towns. Each town will present a talk about that town. Peter envisioned a few people would show up, so they had it in the history room. Little did he know that the room was overflowing with people, and it ended up being into this room. During its heyday, this room was packed with more than 100 people or so that came. Back then, it was co-sponsored by the Patten Free Library and the Bath Historical Society. Peter would introduce the speakers, then say, silence your cell phone, hold your questions to the end, and have a collective talk. A little background on me, and I'm not sure if these notes are in order or not, but I first came involved probably about 2011, when there was another talk coming, and I had a lot of, I had a huge amount of resources on the subject, so I wanted to offer what I had for that subject, and so that's how I got started here. Then Peter had me, I started to volunteer in the history room. And ironically, Peter asked me to identify slides in another part of Roy Lawrence's collection. I then saw these slide reels, and I wanted to rearrange the slides to put them in the order that I thought they should be in. Well, Peter thought that was like the worst thing. Well, now I completely understand. So while I was volunteering in there, I saw Mel Hodgkins at the microfilm machine. I loved learning that machine, reading the old newspapers for the old history with them. Back to today's talk. Well, I also want to talk about Peter and Robin Haynes. Back then, Robin and Peter Haynes were the managers of the history room. They went out of their way to help the library patrons. And also the other historians of Bath that I aspire to be is like Carrie Nelson. I believe she's the preeminent historian of Bath that's still alive today. Kelly Page knows her maritime history, really good at the Maritime Museum. Judy Barrington knows her architectural history through and through. Charlie Burton, can't beat Charlie Burton. He's not one of those that are around today. Least and not to forget Nathan. We can't forget Nathan. I also want to include Walter Kimball, Terry Hanna, and the crew out at the cemetery department because they're really dedicated to the work that they do. A little more than a year ago, Mary Kate Bosnick, who was then the history room archivist, talked about this town history series, going to be 20 years old soon. That kept echoing in my head. Because of that came the 2025 VHS calendar, which is what I got all this from the slide talk that Roy gave, and I guess that's what I wanted to say. I hope that. I also wanted to do the presentation by using the slide projector. Okay. But I also remembered my 7th grade audiovisual club, which Bernice Colby taught. And the most important thing that she would talk about was warming the bulb on the machine. So I didn't want to pop the bulb and ruin the, just getting those bulbs these days are expensive. So anyway. So now we're doing it this way. So along with the slide presentation, about all I have are these little notes that were included. And this has a description of what number the slides were, and the location, and then the date that he made made the images. And I thought I was going to say something about Roy, but I can't remember what I've done with all of that. So, anyways, Roy grew up in Rouseck. I think he was born about 1910 because he graduated and he went to the Old Morris High School, which burned in 1928. Went to the then New Morris High School, which was built, and then he was lucky enough to get a scholarship from the then new Davenport Trust Fund, which was just established just about that year, and was able to go to University of Maine and got an engineering degree. Came to work at the Iron Works, worked his whole career there, and I think he started in 1936. That's the same year he married his wife. They settled up on Park Street. He was community minded throughout all his life. And even after he retired, he just did all kinds of things. And then after his wife passed, he learned how to cook, ate, along with doing the gardening and making sure that neighbors' yards were snow blowed and everything, sharing the vegetables with the neighbors and like that. So this is Roy over here, and that's Peter Goodwin way on the end. I was gonna have names, but I forgot about that, so. Okay, so this is my version of Roy's talk, and I can only hope that I can make him proud of what I've done. Roy's title, Past and Present, is now 20, the present is now 20 years ago. And then the way he had the slide set up, it begins with the present. So I'm wondering why it didn't say present and past. Because slide number 1 was the present city hall. And then it goes back to the previous city hall. All these slides are in almost the same order as Roy had set them up. And I also added one view. And that was in that was, Roy had taken the slide, but I used it from this reel number 2. Yeah. The dates on the slides are the year Roy made the images. Like that's 1961, 1966, 1957. He must have been reading the newspapers because I'm sure there was lots of discussion about the buildings being torn down because he took the pictures just about before they tore them down. Now, the building on the left, well, let me start with this building here. This is the present building, which is at 83 Front Street. And it's currently the Bath Savings Operations Center. But it was built to be the First National Bank of Portland. And then I don't know how long Portland lasted. I thought it was the First National Bank of Bath. But then when I was a kid, it was Maine National Bank. And then it turned to Fleet and all those other names. So this building down here is sometimes known as the Pierce Block and also known as Ledger Block. Now I got to shout out to Henry because Henry couldn't be here today, but he's a descendant of the Ledgers. And that was torn down in 1959 because it really stuck out in the street and they wanted to widen the street. And some of the businesses that were in there were Paul's Shoe Store, Shaw's Bookstore would have been right there. And the part that I cut off on that would have been, there was a sign, a neon sign that said Lagarde's Taxi, and it had the telephone number. And apparently the office was in one of they had a telephone, one of the downtown businesses. Now this building, which would have been, on this end, this was Front Street, City Hall Smoke Shop. Back there was Bath Daily Times. Colonial Cafe was in there. And I'm not sure what else. Freeman's Barber Shop was in there. So. All right.
I am.
All right.
It's time for it to turn.
Okay.
Sorry.
So there's Roy's version of now, and these are other versions of Front Street from center looking north, right, looking down towards this way, and so you can see. I don't know what else to say. I got too many slides here, so I don't know how Roy did it one at a time. I'm thinking that he did it at one at a time. So. Okay. This down here is the present version of Front Street, as you know. But the upper left, or this one here, the upper right, that was taken in like around 1849. The Saginaw House Hotel was built in 1849, and the pillars came right down to the sidewalk. I got to remember that piece right there about the pillars. The building in the center, that was the old custom house. That's where Creme Cafe is now. And then this church was the Universalist Church. And that, the building that's, took that spot is Church Block, and that's where Patten Printers now resides.
The Saginaw Hotel had burned in 1894.
Yes, it did. I'll tell you later on. Thank you. We've got two views of Greenblatt store. They're in the same spot. This one burned in 1958. This is the replacement. And there's real estate in this side and architect in this side. And the thing about Bath is that a lot of the retailers were immigrants that came from away. And it's a good mix of Jewish people, Greeks, and Italians, and more. I think we have some Americans in there too. Anyways, we got to remember that. Bath was very welcoming back then. So the upper left is what was built as the A&P store. Today it's Brackett's Market. And these two lower buildings were torn down, and the Columbia Hotel sat in the parking lot of the Brackett's Market parking lot. And this building over here says Redlands. I wonder who that is. We have a Redland in the audience today,
It was plumbing and heating.
right? And Mr. Redland, up until last week, was still working at age 91. Anyway, this building, I believe, was built by, or in the early days, was used by Albert Shaw. He had an automobile, sold automobiles. Later, he's known as his home was the emphasis of the Sedgwick Hotel, which we'll see a little later on. Now, this is today's version of Elm Street, which makes in the front street. But at one time, these two buildings were there. And that over there was Mikulski's furniture store. Today is Country Farm, which is still there. So they tore these two buildings down, and we've got a descendant of one of these buildings here. I'm not sure which one, but I think it was Kennebec Food Company. And but this is how we see the street today. And on December 6th, I was hit by a car using the crosswalk. So that's a little information. Now, there were.
Sorry.
Well, that's okay. There were some buildings that really looked crappy. And Bath was really tired back in the 60s. The American House back in its day was really a good hotel. Probably wasn't the first class hotel, but it really was a good hotel. And what you're seeing here now is like worn completely out. So, and when they tore the American House out down, they replaced it with the motor vehicles building here. And then they decided they'd put the police station here. Now, all of this land is all filled land. And I think probably when the motor vehicle building was put up, I think it was probably sinking because it's all filled land. And I'm thinking that the police station is doing the same thing.
The building on the left, you can see the sinking of the ground. What's happening to the wall of the building.
Well, part of that part of that is a distortion on the screen, but I think Charlie Burton said that when you went in there, the floors were just like this. So you didn't have to drink to have the floors like that. So anyways, and the McCormick family ran that hotel for like, probably since from the early days of the 1900s. And we tried to line up these photos so that the church bell, the church spire would be shown that way. We put a lot of thought into doing these. How these slides were laid out. Now, on the other side of the street, there were these buildings here. And I've known this as Ward's bicycle shop, but my researcher put other words down here. And this was Fatten's lumberyard. And today, this is what you see. This big old parking lot here. And what was included in the calendar, I think, but not here, was that when they were digging all this out, there was a cannon found buried in the ground. So I think that's out behind the city boundary now. So here we are at, we've got the Salvation Army building out on Congress Avenue. Many years and decades, it was in this building on Water Street. And this is where Kennebec Meat Company is right now. Well, we have an interesting building here. It's, she's got it at 22 Front Street. And it did have Nick's restaurant, and it did have all these other things that she said. But in the early 1900s, it was a residential home. And I believe it had a porch out on the front. It looked much different than this. And it was the home to William Rouse. And William Rouse is a character in his own. He had a lot of artifacts in the house. And very often he'd take the stuff from the home and it would be displayed in the window of the Bath Daily Times. And I think that he was known to walk around in graduation robes and with the border and all of that. He was quite a character. He's got a beautiful background in the cemetery. And this next slide is a little out of order because I thought and that last slide was opposite of the custom house. And there's a vacant lot there now. Now, this I put this in this order because I thought we'd like around the corner. And this is Lagarde's garage on the, right here. And I mentioned earlier about Lagarde's taxi sign. So this is an earlier incarnation of Lagarde's garage taxi. So then we go on the other side of the street. And I'm glad that I didn't see this. I didn't see this real good, but I thought it was a Shell station. I was right. Right now, this building's still there, but it was built as Heritage Hardware, and it was run by the people that then owned Washburn Lumber Company. But beforehand, that lumber company was run by the Hayes family. And this was Lawrence Small's Shell station. And Lawrence Small was the son of Harold H.P. Small, who was a mayor of the city of Bath for quite a while. And I know their family from when I was a kid. Now we come to something interesting. This is part of the shirt factory down on Middle Street. And when they vacated, they went to this new complex out on Congress Avenue. And when Congress Shirt Factory, when they came out here, they turned to Congress Sportswear. And when they went out of business, Rogers Hardware moved into that space. And today it's known as Rocky's Hardware. But back down on Middle Street, that's the credit union. But that building doesn't exist anymore. You gotta remember, all this stuff is like 20 years ago. But there is, the credit union built a new building on that same spot. So here we are in front of Hilliard's Drugstore. And that is the northernmost part of the store now you're cooking. And previously it had been the, like she said, the A and K Street Railway, and that's the Androscoggin and Kennebec Street Railway. And they took the streetcars out in like 1936 or 37, I think. So that stopped being there. But Mrs. Hilliard was my third grade school teacher, Charlotte Hilliard, and her husband Ralph ran this business, and he might have went to work for Hallett's after he sold out. So here we get to the grand old Hallett's drugstore. This interior shot here I included because I have romanticized the interior of Hallett's drugstore. I romanticized what people would know as Page's drugstore, Page's jewelry store, almost next door, which is now Springer's. I love the Opera House, to name a few, but Hallett's drugstore didn't start in this spot. It started out on Center Street, and it was run by Andrews Hallett with an S, not Andrew, by Andrews. And later on, he sold it out to Fred Cox, who worked for him very early on. And Fred went to Boston, and I think he ordered all these cabinetries to make this place. And then while he was in Boston, there was a law in Boston that said that the businesses could not have sidewalk advertisements. So he bought the clock and had it moved to Bath. So that was then. And I really don't know anything. I don't remember anything about being in this Hallett's drugstore, this whole part. But this happened in like 1966. They moved to the corner after Newberry's moved out. And that like tripled their space. They had a bigger lunch counter and all that, but you know, the romance of the old store wasn't there. And I know, and I believe I know where all of this is. I'm not going to tell you.
So Trues had the,
Yes,
had the drugstore.
yes,
It was moved over.
right. And there were generations of Trues that worked there.
Right. The best thing was sitting at those glass tables there and seeing how much gum.
The best thing is going to Dr. Beverly and getting an ice cream certificate for Hallett's.
Right,
Never got one of those either.
right. Now I wanted you to remember about the pillars on Saginaw House. Shortly afterwards, they were changed to brackets. So you see the brackets there, not the pillars. And the corner store was for many years Thompson Brothers Clothing Store. And in the sidewalk are the brass letters that say Thompson's Corner. And that's what that stands for. And when Thompson's went out of business, they weren't the next business going in there, but Newberry's ended up in there for decades and decades. And it was when Newberry's and all the other stores left downtown, go to Cook's Corner or beyond, that's when Hallett's made the big move to the corner. And this burned, as John said, it burned in 1894, and I'm going to say that it was January 24th and January 28th. Yeah. So here we are, we're at the top of Center Street Hill looking up to the courthouse. And I'm not sure whether that might be the Sedgwick Hotel or the Sedgwick Shaw Mansion or not. I can't see from this angle. But here's the bell for the old City Hall. And here's the side of the second hot block as we know it today. Bath Trust Company was in this business. He built it here. And there were lots of buildings over here. Some of them were wooden. So those disappeared over the years. And now we're at Water Street looking west. And this building on here was John Desmond's clothing company. And I think is it goes by here. Is that what it said? Yeah. Okay, so I think that would be what we would know as Mario's recently. One of these buildings disappeared, and I think where her pointer is, I think that building disappeared when I was a kid. Beyond that was Olympia Spa, restaurant and bakery. And when I was a kid, it was Bowman's restaurant and bakery. So that's on the south side of Center Street in that block. Now we're looking on the north side of Center Street in that same block. And this is Getterman's appliance store. And when, urban renewal, they denied urban renewal, and that's a good thing because our downtown would look a lot different than it does today. But what it did do is it got rid of all the wooden buildings that have been derelict for years and years. So Arthur Getterman, who sold appliances and clothing also, revamped this block here. And Arthur and Mrs. Getterman happened to be my next door neighbors throughout my growing up. So you know, a special place in my heart. So here's the, we're back on the south side of Center Street again. And there's the Olympia, still Olympia. Okay, there it is. But it's right beside the Opera House. And I was lucky enough to spend many Saturdays in the Opera House. And all of that was torn down to make place for the credit union that's there today. The Marquee still does exist in Woolwich. I would love to see what it looks like today, but I'm sure it's quite overgrown mess. So directly on the corner where what was Roy's Market was W.L. Chase and Company. And I'm not sure whose collection there is, but there are a lot of interior shots of the Chase store showing the meat counter and all this stuff. It was really a fantastic store. But later on, it was Roy Richter's family owned it, and the Bath Historical Society archivist, that's Tim Richter. That's his family that owns this building, ran that store. Now, diagonally across the street from Roy's was Stego's Auto Parts then, but it was built as a gas station. And behind it, you can see what is now called the Chocolate Church, but back in the day, it was the Central Church. Now, this area here is where Runwood Soup is. Now, that lot looks tiny. I don't know how they could fit all these buildings in there. Well, okay, John says that Angelo's had the best hot dogs, but I've heard they had pretty good Italian sandwiches too. And I'm thinking that this might have been the Oddfellows Hall at one time. But on here was XL Cleaners. Now, if Brian Hatch was here, he would tell you right off the bat that his grandmother worked there. So you gotta remember that. So we're back across the street where Stego's was, and This shows that where the gas station was there, and previously was the commercial house, which was a rooming hotel. More recently, people would know it as Wilson's Fish Market, and there was an antique store in there like that. And you got to see that it's on the east side of the railroad tracks. Now, on the west side of the railroad tracks, you've got, which was Steen's sheet metal shop, and previous to that was Kraft's battery service, and that was a hotel or a rooming house. For years, but with those tall chimneys. Now, directly across the street from that was Troops Hardware, and you can see where the railroad tracks go. So when they tore that down, which is in this vacant spot right here, but beside there is, I think the word called it the training center for the Iron Works. But at one point, it turned into be Liberty's drugstore. And not on the next page. I think we'll go back to that a little bit. Oh, no. So now we're at the corner of Center and Washington. And the Washington House here occupies that corner now. And previous to that was the Sears Roebuck Company. And before the Sears Roebuck was the music hall. And the good thing that I know about that is I think there's a traffic light. You can see that there. And the traffic light was installed on June 10th, 1936. And that was the same year that Vacation Land came on the license plates for the state of Maine. So those are things that you really need to know. Now, getting back to Sears, when they were tearing the Sears building down, I was standing right there. And they were working on the back of the building. And the building was working on the right level, and that piece of plate glass fell. But as you can see, it didn't hit me. But the good thing about this whole thing was, just behind Sears, I think there was a garage that was sitting right on the sidewalk, and I think they pushed the garage over. And underneath the garage was like a sand pile. Sitting right on top of the sand pile was a little drugstore bottle from Samuel Anderson's pharmacy. And that was the very start of my collection.
Oh, no. How old?
So it was that.
57.
Well, I was born in 59, so I think I was old. And I looked at that this morning, and I know where it isn't. But I didn't look where it is. I tried to bring it.
My ability. Yeah.
But now we're going down to Washington Street across from the Iron Works. And this is the Hotel Phoenix, and later it was named the Stagecoach Hotel. It ended up having a fire, and then I think Harry Crooked tore it down in 1964. And it's on the corner of what is now known as Stacy Street. It's a parking lot. Back then it was Robinson's Lane. So now we're going further south on Washington Street. And this is the today view of the now, which might be a little out of date. But previously, this building, which is part of the Hyde Windlass Company, was there. And that is about where the end of Russell Street is, I believe. And all this pile of stuff here, for years I thought that was wood. But somebody in this room flew me in and told me it was iron ore. I did, not that I asked the question, you just said it. So now we all know that that is iron ore to be smelted to do the castings for the hydrolysis company. And a little further south, this building was the old powerhouse for the city. I don't know when that was abandoned because Central Maine Power bought out all the little power companies all over the place. But this was where the original power for the city of Bath came in. And that would have been opposite Caton's Market, which is at the end of Spring Street. So, but on the other end of that building would have been Haskell's odorless cleaners. And then we see Bath Lumber Company business right there. And all of that's gone, all of that's consumed by the ironworks. Now we're going to the other end of Washington Street. We're at North Street, looking north. And you can see the street car there. And this is where Mary Small's house is now here. But these two houses still exist. What you're missing are all the beautiful elm trees. This was known as the Avenue. And, you know, we just had the most beautiful elm trees. So here we are, up at the top of Center Street and High Street Hill. And back then it was the Sedgwick Medical Buildings that replaced the building that was burned out of the old Sedgwick Hotel, which was previously the home to Albert Shaw. Somebody in this room will tell me that Albert didn't build it, but he did live in it. So,
Albert had two boys. And,
I thought it was Milton that had the two boys.
well, I think Albert had two boys. This one belonged to one of them. And there's an identical one to this up in Greenville. Get up on the east side of town, up there on top of the hill. It's still there as an inn.
Yeah, right. So in 1936, Joseph Porter Sr. turned this building into a hotel by adding an addition onto the back. And tragically, in 1973, we had a fire. And I really didn't want to include this slide because there were fatalities that happened in this fire. Now we're looking down Center Street Hill from High Street, little, you know, just down a little bit. And this old view has three houses, but this house is not in this view here. So this house still exists. And this is on the corner of Raymond Court here. And you can see where the Central Church spires right there. And this is a very interesting shot. The present day fire department sits here. This building was torn down to build the fire station. This started out as the Bath High School. And it was designed by Bath architect Francis H. Bassett, who has designed many buildings around Bath. And he also designed the parish hall for Winter Street Church, which is across the street. But the whole fun thing about all of this is that they tore this building down to build the fire department. This building has recently, which is the north section of the high school, old high school, has been torn down. And they're gonna build the fire department there. So isn't that like something? And now we're back on Washington Street, right outside our door here. And we've got William Zorak, Spirit of the Sea. which is not there now, but has lived there for many years, and will come back next year. She had a little foundation problem this year.
Yeah.
Previous to that was Robert's Fountain, and we've also got a shot of the gazebo. We're gonna go back down to Lower Washington Street, and you see the launching of the Wyoming. And everybody knows about the Wyoming. Or they should. And if they don't, go to the Maritime Museum, which is in this building here, which is sitting on the Percival Small Shipyard, the last wooden ship building. So Percival Small Shipyard was the last existing wooden shipbuilding complex in the world, United States.
He's asking the world, United States. That's.
Percival Small.
Yeah.
That's your brains.
Okay, we're moving on. You're not paying attention. Here we go. We're going to talk about the ironworks for a chance. And this is a shot from the 1930s. And they had a little bit of work, but not much. And this is the slip for the ferry slip. You know, from the ferries coming before the bridge was the Carlton Bridge. The first bridge was built across the river. And you've got the battleship Georgia up on the upper left. I can't remember anything about that at the moment. That's okay. Oh, I didn't know this was going to be here. Anyhow, there are some train ferries, and I'm assuming that that's where that slip was, the land part of the slip. And this was very interesting because this rig adjusted the platform for the trains to come in and out off the ferry itself. With the tides, right, thank you. That would be the extreme north of the ironworks yard today. All right. Now we're back down on Commercial Street. And this is the Tory Roller Bushing Complex. And some of this still exists today. This building here is now the present day Elks Club. And if you're driving down Commercial Street, this doorway is still, maybe this part is here, but this is evident here, and they've just changed the roof line on the for the present building today. All of this has been torn down. And here we've got Bath Fuel Company, which started out as Washburn's Garage. And the thing about this building was that it was the first concrete poured in place building in the state of Maine. So I don't know what the difference between cement and concrete is, but figure that out. And here is the bath freight shed. And no, and that didn't look too much different until just a couple of years ago. So these are all buildings down on the waterfront. This building here was Trott Brothers Grain Company, and later Fred Rose had a business out of there. Fred Rose is a West Bath farmer, and that was directly opposite Bath Fuel Company at the foot of Broad Street. And these buildings are also on the waterfront. And I think you can understand why they're not there now. But it's turned into a beautiful waterfront park. And it's nice that we have pictures of them for posterity. I'm glad we got what we got now. And here are the automobile ferries that cross the river, and Roy had to take the ferries to get to school. So, you know, he's probably in one of the, you know, those shots somewhere. So we know that this is Bathport, and I think we used to call it the chicken coops or something. Yeah, that still exists, but this sail loft sat in about its place. And this is another shot of the waterfront. Now we have Lehman's Machine Shop. And previous to that, Blaisdell worked in there, and he I guess he ran a machine shop too. And this is on Commercial Street. And I'm thinking that this is Summer Street here. Yeah, the Summer Street.
No, that's Commerce Street.
Commerce Street, thank you. So Commerce Street would have been a little further south than where we are. I know this is Summer Street here. There's the library building, and I'm not sure what that's saying, but you can read it. And this is the Berwyn Vale, which is in the coal pocket.
I thought that was Bailey's Auto Supply.
Well, it was, and I also had Arthur Berry Oil Company too.
Yeah, and up on the corner there, you got the radio.
Yes. And later Green Glass used that as a storage area, and I think that might have been McClellan's store, one of the very earliest brick buildings in the city of downtown. I might have that a lot, but I'm trying not to.
The real question is what was the street between Commerce Street and Down Street?
Berry Street.
Berry. But Swenson's Street, where was that street? Located next to Redlands on the south side. And then at the end of Elm Street, the traffic going to Berry came down. And went down Berry Street, right straight.
And then Marion Street was in there something.
Yeah, not the,
Right. So here's the Ransom B. Fuller, and as you can see, it took the first passengers in June of 1903.
He was built in back with the Minott building.
Not on the right page.
Are we going on to, am I going back?
New England Shipbuilding, right. And now we're at 140 Commercial Street, and this is the Front Street side of that. And it was built as Watson and Fry Foundry. Later it was Corner Brick Foundry. Sam Prower for many years in the 60s used that as his warehouse until they moved to Portland. And then this obscure Morse family bought it until it was torn down. And the new hotel is built on a spot. The other piece of this is that Charles Cummings had an auto dealership.
You stopped sharing your screen.
I did, unable to, click on OK, unable to establish secure connection. Browser? Browser doesn't.
Bodwell's had a place in that building also. Well, I'll tell you the story. After Bill came back, and he wanted to know where the safe was that was in the building. Because he thought he was
Yeah. I saw it. Because they went. More. I mean, he really wants to. Your father. Yeah. Okay. You got food in.
Sure. Now you can understand why I don't use computers.
No, but they- yeah. Yes. No, I haven't. No, yes, I guess you had all this, but yes. Yeah, that was nice. I was, yeah.
All right, we're back. Well done. As I was saying, Charles Cummings, had a DeSoto dealership in here, and I sold other cars also. And we have, descendants of the Cummings family in here. And later on, when Bill Bardwell, I think, got his start from out of this building. So now we're on the High Street. I think we're on High Street. And this was lastly known as the Liberty Bottling Company. And the Poulos family ran that for many years. And when that was torn down, the Banff Daily Times moved their operations into a little building, nondescript building on that lot. And today it's out of the Road Federal's parking lot.
It was a bowling alley on the top floor.
Right. Right.
Is it duck pins or candle? Candle.
Yeah. So on the left is the present custom house building and old post office. And on this side, you see the pre-1910 custom house building and post office before the addition on, which happened at that time, which probably doubled the size of the building. But luckily, they were smart enough to make the new addition look like the old addition. And if you look kind of closely on the granite, you can see that there's just a little variation of the color of the granite. But I think they did a good job with that addition on. And we're just a little south of that. This ends up being King's Tavern. And King's Tavern was in a smaller version, William King's house. And when they built the custom house and post office back in 1852, I think, they moved King's home, which sat on that lot, to this location, which was just a little south of the custom house post office. And J.R. Shannon ran it with the hotel man. That's why it's called Shannon House. And these buildings were taken down when the approach to the then new Fountain Bridge in 1928 was built. So now we're at the railroad station. We've got two bottom shots of the old railroad station, and the shot up on the top is the present day railroad station, which is now occupied by Main Street Bath and the Tourist Information Center. And that's owned by the city of Bath. And at one time, Jesse Albert Dental Clinic was in this end, that you see on the left end of it.
Yeah.
Now here's another one of my favorite buildings. And these are taken 1 year apart. It was built, she got it up there, Columbia Shoe Dressing Company, which didn't last very long. But then the pants factory, what was called the pants factory, went in there for many years. And throughout my growing up, it was Mikulski's warehouse. And you can see the Mikulski sign was right there. But this building just had windows all over the place, on all sides, on all stories. And as the building got, when Halcyon took the building over, it started to look like this. And then they had a new inclination, so that even different windows or different detail is taken on from what you see there. We're almost to the end. Now we're at the extreme south end of Washington Street. And on the left is the Plant Memorial Home, which was built by Thomas Gustav Plant and then named the Old Folks Home. And back then there was no Social Security, and he wanted a place for people that didn't have a place to live to go and stay. And that was like 1917 that building was built. Previous to that was the Tarbox Estate, which was this is a poor view of a very Victorian Queen Anne house that must have been absolutely gorgeous. But previous to that was the Marine Hospital, because this is considered Hospital Point historically. And nobody knows what the Marine Hospital looked like as far as I know. So these are the people that I want to thank for making all this happen. It really couldn't have happened without all of you. Me having a full room is just like Christmas.
Yeah. Any questions?
Any questions that I can answer?
What year was the train station torn down and the new one built?
Well, I want to say in the early 1940s, because when the war was going, William Newell wanted the land, and he propositioned to build a new train station, and that all had to do with the war.
A quick comment about the bridge and the ferry service, where Lawrence, of course, came from Rosick, and he went to Morse High School, was very distressed when they built the bridge, because when he walked from Rosick to come to school, he would get on a nice warm ferry.
Oh,
Well, when the bridge was built, he had to walk across the bridge, and it distressed him during his high school years.
Right, right. And I've yet to walk across the new bridge.
We'll never do it.
So, thanks for adding that.
No.
Yeah.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Boy, I put it on today. Well, you know, these actions.
Lawrence, yeah, because he would have
This afternoon.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I have.